The following podcast is a presentation of Project Entertainment Network.
Hello, welcome to Staring into the Abyss, making his triumphant return from the New Hampshire mountains. It's me, Richard Gerlach, the host.
You survived.
I survived.
I didn't think about that for a second. I was like, wait, Mike wasn't gone last week.
This is how much of an integral part Richard is to this show.
With me, as always, is Michael Patrick Hicks.
Hello. I'm back to co-hosting duties. I am no longer the front man of the Abyss.
No longer will we spend an hour talking about Food Network.
Sorry, Guy Fieri.
With me is, and also, my other co-host, Matt Brandenburg.
Hi, everybody.
And a very special guest today with Tyler Jones.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming.
It's an honor to have you. We actually did. We'll have an episode coming up soon with Vietnamese, where we discuss one of your novellas.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Yes, it was
right on.
Dark Side of the Room.
Yes.
Which
very cool.
It was a lot of fun to read that.
Right on. Well, thank you so much for reading it. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
And it feels good to be back. I spent last weekend up in the New Hampshire mountains, and I survived. I didn't see a bear.
Any cannibals?
No cannibals.
Any wrong turn kind of scenarios you got into?
No. We did get hiking and get eaten up by bugs.
Oh.
Killer bugs?
My
flies?
girlfriend and I, we put a bunch of bug spray on, and the bugs still ate us. It was horrible.
Did you lose an eye?
No, I'm good. No eye drinking from the bugs this time.
Oh God. Were there any cockroaches?
No cockroaches.
Damn.
Although we did
you
have
might want to rethink that bug spray.
Right?
Was it like a bug attractant?
Yeah.
It was expired. I don't even know.
That's what they don't tell you when it expires. When it expires.
Used by 97.
Yes.
We did have
for some reason that attracts bugs. It's like a small window. If you get it past expiration date, it works exact opposite way.
Yeah, it just turns into sugar.
We did have a huge ass spider that was in our cabin.
Oh, see?
This place was incredibly off the grid. We had no phone service, we had no internet, and we only had electricity for 2 hours a day.
Why only 2?
He turned the generator on for an hour between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m., and then again between 8 p.m. and 9 p.m.
Did the spider do that?
No, the manager did that. The guy who ran the place.
The spider actually owns the house. It's you only get power 2 hours a day.
It was a lot of fun. Besides that tangent, today we're going to be discussing Last Breath by Joe Hill, which can be found in his collection 20th Century Ghosts. Yeah. Which, if you're a horror fan, you probably already own the collection. But if you don't own it, you should probably unfuck that and get a copy.
You can.
I do own it, and I have not read it. So,
well, at least you had a copy, Mike.
I guess I've got at least 2 copies. I think I got the ebook and the paperback, so I'm good.
Got to read it, Mike.
I know. In fact, this is how lame I was. To save me the trouble of downloading it, I just bought the 99-cent edition of Last Breath instead.
I did that too.
And just let it auto-load.
Because I am apparently not a horror fan, because I do not own that book. So
you're an
you gotta unfuck that, Matt.
In fact, podcast over.
Yeah, done. Game over.
Tyler Jones just gave us our Yoko moment. The abyss is over.
Oh man,
Better stay off the streets of New York just to be safe.
Oh.
But I like going there.
Speaking of Yoko, not to go off track here.
Oh, that's something we never do.
Yeah, the track's way gone now.
But that story of Lennon and his assassination, there's this oddly heartbreaking detail that not a lot of people know about. You guys may, but Michael David Chapman. Is it Michael David Chapman?
The shooter? I'm not sure.
Yeah, the shooter is Chapman, right?
Yeah.
It's one of those three names. Maybe I'm confusing him with Michael David Wilson. That could be.
And it's exclusive. Michael David Wilson killed John Lennon.
But he actually approached Lennon earlier that day for an autograph. He had an advanced copy of, I think it might have been Double Fantasy.
Oh, wow.
On vinyl. And there's actually a photograph that exists of him getting the record signed by Lennon. And then later that evening, he shot him. And it's this heartbreaking image when you see it, when you realize that John Lennon was signing an autograph for his murderer, even though he didn't realize it.
It's crazy.
Wow. And then speaking of Yoko, she have you guys ever listened to her music at all?
No.
I have.
So she's got this, reputation for creating just unlistenable music, but some of it is really beautiful and interesting and intricate. And I think it might have been a year or two after Lennon's death, she made an album called Season of Glass, and she took a photograph that ended up being the front cover of her album. And it is a glass of water sitting on a table in front of a window that overlooks the New York City skyline. And the glass is half full of water, or maybe half empty. And next to it are a pair of eyeglasses, and they are stained, splattered with John Lennon's blood. And they were the glasses he was wearing when he was killed. And it is a stunning image. It's beautiful, heartbreaking. Yeah.
Crazy.
So sorry, you said Yoko Ono, and I...
No problem.
Honestly, I had no idea about either of that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's a beautiful image. If you guys have time, look it up. The album's called Season of Glass.
Wow. I feel like the tone of the rest of this episode is not going to jibe with this.
It's like, well, maybe. I mean, considering the story.
Yeah.
Last breath.
Yeah, that's
Very
true. Just wasn't expecting Tyler to drag us this deeply down. 5 minutes in, we're already at death's door and talking about John Lennon and bloody glasses. And wow.
Hey, man, I have my coffee. We're hitting the gas, right?
Yes. So.
Pedal to the floor.
Normally we keep things pretty light, but we're off to a bleak start.
No, we're at a great start. It's perfect.
I think we're at a great start too. Typically,
well, to lighten it up, let's not forget that Lennon wrote a great song called "Everybody's Got Something to Hide Except for Me and My Monkey."
Apparently, I found out too. Lennon also wrote one horror story.
Oh.
It's in an anthology that was. I have a picture of it. I'm going to probably read. It's like 2 pages long. I'll report back on how it is.
What the fuck?
The story.
No kidding.
It's like a 2-page horror story. It's called like Spies on Frank or something like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Who
knew? And look, we're back talking about horror again.
Good job.
Horror is a circle.
True. What we like to do before we get into like the big discussion is kind of give a weekly recommendation of somebody we've consumed. I'll typically go first, and I would like to recommend Ride or Die by James Newman, which is his new novella. I read this thing in like an hour. Like, I devoured it. It's about a group of high school girls who one of them finds out that her father is having an affair. So her and her friends decide to go to the house of the woman the dad's cheating on the wife with and vandalize the house. But when they get there, things aren't really as they seem. And it's a lot darker than what was originally going on. It's James Newman, so I'm pretty sure we can assume what's really going on, but the woman the father's cheating on his wife with is a serial killer.
Nice.
And these high school girls break into her house.
Excellent.
And it gets bloody and vicious and everything you expect from a James Newman story.
Wow.
Yeah, it sounds awesome.
That sounds great.
The only thing I don't like about the story is I think he uses a bit too much slang with the teenage girls. There's like one girl who like goes out loud, OMG, several times in the book. And, like, the slang kind of took me out of the story a little bit.
You mean people don't say those out loud?
Not really. As someone who teaches teenagers, I will tell you, not really.
You're just a grumpy old man is the problem.
Yes.
LOL.
LMAO. But the story should be out by the time this podcast is released, and it's another great addition to James Newman's bibliography, and I highly recommend it. And it's pretty fucked up. There's a couple scenes in the novella that had me gasping a little bit of how fucked up it was.
That's awesome.
So if you want some good gore, this book's got you covered.
I'm always down.
Sounds good to me.
Gore.
Yeah, it's a very simple story, but it's really intense. And it has a nice heartwarming ending too. It's a whole package. But Mike, what about you?
Well, in a similar thread of something that is simple and dark and gory, I read Island by Richard Laymon, which I think we are going to be discussing in a future episode.
We better, because I'm reading it. If we're not, I'm stopping.
Well, I guess we have to then.
Lots of rumps.
Yes. Richard Laymon likes rumps and he cannot lie.
Oh my God. I'm like 20% in, and it's just the main character is such a skis, but you can.
Oh, he definitely is. Our young little Rupert, 19-year-old Rupert.
Who's thinking with the wrong head the entire time.
Yeah, he is the definite stereotypical epitome of horny, sexually frustrated 19-year-olds who have constant hard-ons for anything with a heartbeat. So,
which is very true here.
After a boating accident strands him on an island with some bikini-clad ladies.
Well,
he thinks it's going to be heaven, and it turns up that this is not the dream vacation he had in mind. There's a whole lot of murder going on.
Yes.
Very gory, too.
Yeah. I will say, Matt, I encourage you to stick with it. There were times where it is overly long, and there were times that I was negatively thinking, how the fuck is there still 300 pages? How is there still 200 pages? Yes. It was like, oh, shit. Okay, what's he going to do for the next 100 pages? And then, there is, in hindsight, a reason for the way this narrative takes shape. But we'll talk about that more after you finished it on an upcoming episode.
Okay.
Or I saw you give it 4 stars, so
I did.
Enjoy it a lot.
Yeah, the end of it did kind of end up changing my perspective. There were points where probably about halfway I was thinking, I don't know, I was debating DNFing it and wasn't enjoying it that much, but it is a page turner. It is kind of compulsively readable, and ultimately I'm glad that I stuck with it, although there are definitely a fair share of criticisms to be had, but I did ultimately find it to be a pretty good, nicely dark beach read kind of thing. And as we discussed last week, I'm on my little aquatic horror beach read trip here.
Say what you will about Laymon, like, his text can be overbloated, lots of rumps, lots of breasts. His prose is very readable, and his prose reads very fast.
And reading it is kind of like there's a bit of a master class in how to deliver a suspense novel. There's a lot of twists that what I had originally thought were premature, but then he twists the narrative again. Later, I was like, oh, shit, like this is the kind of stuff that would normally be done in the climax of a book. And here it is at 20%, at 30%, at 40%. It's just kind of like he keeps kind of ringing this narrative and bringing it around into something that's a little bit different and keeping you in suspense as to what is going on here.
Yeah.
And then finally making the big reveal that drives you into the end of the book. And he was definitely very, very good at crafting these kind of suspense horror novels that keep you interested and keep you invested just from a plot perspective, even if the characters themselves are pretty skeezy and not really somebody that you want to spend a whole lot of time with, but you do just to kind of see, well, how's this next person going to die? What's the next twist going to be? How many more times can he describe bikini-clad boobs every single chapter?
And it's like, you kind of like skip the fact that he is with this group it's his girlfriend and his girlfriend's family. So
Yeah.
She has two sisters. They were both married. And then her dad is remarried to, I'm guessing, a younger woman. And so, yeah, so not only is he just interested in just any woman, it's like sisters.
The little girl's family. Yeah.
Yes, and a
It's like
mom.
he's there with what is like his de facto girlfriend, but by the time he meets the mom and the sister, he's like, he doesn't want anything left to do with this girl that he's with.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, I kind of thought she was hot, but now that I see her mom, like, holy cow.
Yeah.
And that's her sister? Like, but Jesus.
and her husband just died? Sweet.
Yeah. I'm in. This is it. This is definitely it.
So, yeah.
I got my opening. All it needed was to split his head open with an axe, and I got this.
And like I said, I'm only 20% in, so none of that is spoiler. That is all pretty quick in the story.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that happens right up front that, like I said, in more reserved text, that would kind of be like later on in the end game kind of material. But here it's like all right up front. Like it's what surprised me because the big reveal happens right around where you're at, Matt. And it was like, okay, this is the kind of shit that normally that I was expecting to come at the end. Like, how is he going to drag this mystery out for 500 pages? Like, oh no, we're not. This is it. This is what's happening.
So it'll be fun to discuss.
Yeah.
I think so too. The only other Laymon book I've read was Savage, and I'm liking this one a lot more than Savage. Savage is like, I fucking hated the narrator of Savage so much it killed the book for me. But it's about a horny British teenage boy.
So he's got like a trend apparently.
Who's kidnapped by Jack the Ripper, and they take a ferry to America. And Jack the Ripper goes on a killing spree, and this boy's trying to like fend for himself and find people to stop Jack the Ripper.
Okay.
But Jack the Ripper well, never mind. I'm not going to go into that. Whatever.
It was actually the other way around, wasn't it? That they think that Jack the Ripper was actually an American.
I think the common belief now is he was I think either an Eastern European immigrant, but one of the leading theories was he was an American.
Yeah, there's a fascinating theory that he was actually H.H. Holmes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I don't believe.
And there's a lot of compelling evidence to suggest that. Like, he was traveling to England at the time. Some of the handwriting seems to match.
Oh, crazy.
And then whenever he was traveling to England, there were Ripper murders, and then when he wasn't there was a break in them.
Oh, weird.
Could be coincidence, but it's compelling.
Interesting.
Oh,
It's one of those things that like we'll never know because it was just way too long ago.
Yeah.
Unless we
I'm gonna
develop
find
time
out.
travel.
I'm going to find out for sure.
Find a time machine.
Oh, that'd be
I'm going to write one of those books that's like the definitive story.
There you go.
Tyler's Forensic
go.
Files.
Right. Exactly. With no forensic experts.
No.
Expertise.
Just a good hunch with a strong
Yeah,
instinct.
Hey, that's sometimes.
I'm not
it's
above
like a
manufacturing evidence, too.
It's not like he can refute it.
Right.
If the glove don't fit.
We all know he was a murderer already.
Exactly.
Yeah. But Matt, what about
Dead.
Matt? What about your recommendations from last week?
Well, I like Mike said, I'm reading The Island. So is it The Island or Island? I'm never sure what to call it.
It is just Island. There is
Island.
no the.
I'm reading
But
Island.
it feels weird to just say I'm reading Island.
Yeah.
Does.
Richard Laymon, Island.
Like it's just an island. So I'm reading that wacky book. So I won't discuss that too much.
We haven't even gotten to the real wacky yet. Like,
Which is crazy. That's like your posts and your comments are what's keeping me going, because if I didn't have any of that, I mean, like, I guess I would be somewhat interested because and I don't know yet. So maybe in the next couple of pages, they'll confirm the theory that they have about one of the people.
well, I will tell you without spoiling it, but I cannot wait to hear your reaction to one of the big battles at the end of the book, like one of the climactic moments that I think you're absolutely going to love. I cannot wait to hear what you have to say about this.
Okay, because yeah, it's a lot, and it's funny just because it's one of those things where, because it's kind of a journal. This Rupert is writing the journal, and Laymon at least kind of like sneaks in stuff to make why he's writing it kind of as stuff is happening, because
Right.
you're kind of because and you've talked about that before, Mike, where you're like, who's gonna be in the middle of this discussing it, but it works for this. So anyway, I'll save my discussion on that for the episode. Let's see. I talked a little bit last week about Cooties Shots Required. I did finish that this past week, and I kind of wanted to bring up one story, the last story, which was Damian Angelica Walters, and I'm trying to remember what the title of it is, and I have it right in front of me so I can tell you. A Perfect Hunger, A Certain Rage is the story in A Cooties Shots Required, and it was the perfect ending to this anthology. So again, last week discussed it. It's basically all kind of it's all about kid like horror sort of to this kind of thing. It's kind of
She's a great author.
Oh yeah, no, she's great, and she kills it in this one. It's again from Broken Eye Books, if you didn't listen to last week's. In this story, it's these teenage girls at like a high school, and there's kind of this. She's not really the queen bee, but she's kind of, people follow her. She does the trends, and at the beginning of the story, she decides she's not going to eat. She says, "I'm not eating anymore," and so all the girls stop eating, and it's days and days. We have no idea why she stopped it. She just did, and it's kind of covering all the girls checking on her and trying to find out when they should eat. And she's like, "Well, I didn't eat dinner today," or "I didn't eat lunch yesterday," whatever. And so nobody eats in this school. And then she starts like, they all meet in the park and they all just kind of sit together, and something kind of passes through them all. And then they all have a kind of similar dream about being out in a field, and they're all kind of touching and holding hands and stuff. So it just kind of the slow buildup of how that affects the whole town and affects the whole school. Nobody knows what to do. The teachers are avoiding looking at any of the girls. The boys are all just steering clear, not saying anything. And then then the main girl doesn't show up to school anymore. And you kind of start realizing, and the ending it comes out of nowhere, but totally works with what you find out happens. So it was an absolutely amazing story. I highly recommend finding this Cooties Shot Required. We talked about this last week too, but it sort of just came out of nowhere, and it's been really under the radar. I haven't seen any talks. It's not even up on Goodreads, so like you can't even find it there. I don't know why it's not there. Broken Eye Books had kickstarted this months ago, and this one in Weather Change, which I just started too. So anyway, if you can find it and pick it up. It's a great anthology.
Now, if it was a Kickstarter, do you know if it's available on Amazon or not yet? Sometimes they do like an exclusive release. There was one that had come out that I forget the name of it now, but it was like an ode to Italian horror.
Oh, I got that one too.
And that was Kickstarted, but they didn't release it in general yet, so there's nothing on Amazon. I don't think it's on Goodreads, because normally Goodreads will pull the Amazon listing into their database.
Oh, that's a good point. Maybe it's
unless
not.
the publisher manually adds it.
Yeah, good question. It is on their website. So if you go to Broken Eye Books website, it's there. But maybe I didn't check to see if it's pre-order or anything yet. So that's a good question. But maybe by the time this airs, it'll be out. So we'll see. But when it comes out.
And Tyler, what about you?
So for my recommendation, I'm going to have to go with Beneath a Pale Sky, the new collection from Philip Fracassi.
Oh, nice.
I love Philip Fracassi's stuff.
He's awesome, yeah. And this new collection is great. It's everything you would want from him. It collects a few older stories and a few newer ones, and it's it's great. And I want to give a shout out to my good friend Dan Frazier. He had a fantastic short story called Natural Selection that was featured on the Other Stories podcast back in December, and it's up on Amazon right now is an ebook if you want to read it. It's just a fantastic minimalist story that horrifies and breaks your heart, which is not easy to do.
I'll keep an eye out for that one.
Yeah,
Nice.
So Dan Frazier, Natural Selection.
Nice.
Perfect.
If I can make an addendum to Matt's earlier issue, Cooties' book is now up for pre-order on Amazon, so it should be matriculating into Goodreads.
Good.
Probably already there by the time this comes out.
That's good.
Looks like it has an August release.
Okay, that makes sense now. Well, good. Get it.
Aye, Captain.
So Dan Frazier it is?
Correct. With a Z.
All right.
Frazier with a Z.
Frazier with a Z. So it's F-R-A-Z?
Yes.
I-E-R?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Making sure our audience can get that. And me as well.
Yeah, check it out. You guys will love it.
Awesome.
One last thing for me, well, kind of two things, but one big thing for me is I saw that movie that's making a buzz in the horror community recently, which is Caveat.
Yes. What'd you think? I want to see that.
I fucking loved it.
I watched the trailer and it looked creepy.
What is it about? Because I am so out of the loop with movies these days.
So it's available on Shudder. You can I get Shudder through AMC Plus, which I think is a better way to get the app. Ooh. Just because you're paying $8, but you're getting 3 different streaming services.
Because that's all I need is more.
But it's instead of paying $6 for Shudder, you're paying $8 for AMC, Shudder, IFC Midnight, and Sundance. So
this will be our 75th, 6th, and 7th streaming app to get.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. I think it's better value for your money. That's all I'm saying.
Fair.
So it's an Irish movie. So our Halloween,
quiet. That was the caveat. It's an Irish movie.
Our Halloween author would hate it.
Sorry, go on.
I was trying to make the joke, like the Halloween book that you did.
Yes. Yeah.
But the movie itself follows this man who is accepting a job to look after this girl with mental illness who lives in this abandoned house. And part of his job to look after her is the house is on an island and the man can't swim and it's only available to get to via boat. And he also has to wear a vest that has a chain attached to it, which limits the rooms he can go to, but it's for the girl who lives in this house to make her feel at peace. And as he is in this house, he finds out that her father killed himself and her mother, and everything's all fucked up. But as the movie continues, it's not really quite as it all seems. And it fucking scared me. Like, movies don't scare me. That movie fucking got me. But
so
not a jump scare.
Under house arrest or a prisoner?
Pretty much. Essentially.
Okay.
Who would sign up for that? Okay, fine. You can chain me up. That's cool.
The plot dictates it so.
Gotcha. That's fair.
But
He's like a predator.
I won't get into like what was really going on at this house, but the third act is there's very little. There's only like 2 jump scares in the movie, but the third act is just one of the scariest things I've ever seen.
Have anything to do with that rabbit toy?
Oh, only one part has to do with the rabbit toy.
Okay.
We're talking like the rabbit sex toy or like a animatronic rabbit?
If you watch the trailer, there's like this little toy rabbit.
It's like a toy rabbit that plays a drum.
Oh, okay.
It looks like it has human eyes on it.
There's an eye thing with this movie.
Yeah.
I will say that. There's a scene that just there's 2 parts that stick with me from the third act, and it was fucking scary. So I highly recommend it if you actually want like a scary, creepy horror movie that's not the glorifying the Warrens. Check out Caveat. And that's pretty much it for me, besides the fact I'm reading a pulpy barbarian fantasy novel right now that's tons of fun.
Nice.
If you guys have anything else, you can feel free to share into Last Breath. I know we've all seen Loki, besides Tyler hasn't seen Loki.
I was going to say Loki came out.
We can save our Loki discussion for next week, since it was just like the first episode.
It's good. I'll save it. I'll say that.
I liked it a lot, and that's all I'll say right now.
And Owen Wilson was really good in it.
Yeah, it was awesome to see him. So
I'm surprised we haven't gotten more people complaining about all the Marvel time we've had for the last.
I can start complaining if you want.
It's supposed to be a horror podcast. What are you talking about, MCU?
I think because we're so far behind on releasing that people don't care. They'll forget that the show even came out. And so,
I mean, nobody listens to this thing anyway, so it doesn't matter.
And no one's talking about the MCU.
Yeah.
What is this
little
new?
up and comer?
Yeah.
What is this MCU?
Well, little indie darling that just scrapped itself together.
Yeah. What, do they need more Batman movies or something? What is this?
Well, how about we move right into Last Breath by Joe Hill.
Yeah.
And when I was talking to you, Tyler, this was a story you had your eyes set on from I think the start pretty much. You're like, Last Breath, Joe Hill.
Yeah.
So why this story, especially for 20th Century Ghosts, which is a collection where every story is like a hit in my opinion. But why Last Breath for you?
Yeah, so I've read the collection twice, and I started rereading it. I've got a short story collection coming out in January from Cemetery Gates, and as I was gonna edit the stories, 20th Century Ghosts just has a special place in my heart from the first time that I read it. It also has one of the only stories in it that has ever moved me to tears, which is Pop Art. And if you remember that one at all, that one just hit me right in the heart. So I just wanted to study, I guess, reverse engineer, because I think Joe Hill is just a brilliant short story writer. He is probably my favorite writer. His prose is just, there's something about it. It's comforting in a strange way. I don't know how else to say it, but there's something in how he writes and his sentences that just really envelops me as a reader, and I am fully there, fully invested. And so long story short, I started rereading 20th Century Ghosts before you reached out to me, Richard, and I knew Last Breath was in there, and I sort of remembered it. I've got this weird thing where whether it's a book or a film, I have to consume it multiple times before it actually sinks in. So like the first time I'm experiencing it, and then the second time I can actually slow down and really look at all the pieces, how it works. And so I remembered Last Breath and really liking it, but I didn't remember it in great detail, but I was looking forward to getting to that story to see if it was as good as I remembered it. And of course it was. I think it's just a brilliant, I mean, it's 9 pages, and what he accomplishes in that 9 pages is really impressive. It's a very macabre tale, and it plays with a lot of really cool tropes. Like, I think anytime you've got a weird place, like in this story, for example, this museum of silence, and an unwitting family coming into this situation, and a cadaverous caretaker inviting them in. Like, it reminds me of Waxworks. You remember that film?
Yes.
It's a trope that is just awesome. And even Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory a little bit. A strange guy giving a tour of an unusual place, which is interesting because Roald Dahl does make an appearance in the story.
Yeah, I was getting some Phantasm vibes from this guy, right?
Yeah. There's lots of tropes that it fits, but I love what he accomplishes, and I think it's got a lot of depth. He tackles death and the fear of death, and shows us how adults perceive it versus how children perceive it. So adults approach it with fear, and children approach it with this curiosity. And the reason, in answer to your question, Richard, the reason it really stands out in my head, and I had to think about this long and hard. I've read it twice in the last couple of weeks. What is it about this story that just makes it just stick in my brain? And it's the fact that there is story that takes place after the story ends.
Yes.
So meaning the story ends and that there are events happening, and he could have easily written another story or continued with this story, but he chose to end it where he did, which was a perfect place. So our subconscious is filling in the rest of the details, and that really, I think, leaves a lasting impact.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I liked that the ending was perfect. I mean, I guess we'll get into it, but yeah, I love that the boy, he just hands him his bag at the end.
So good.
Yeah, there's a definite fantastic note of tragedy that the story ends on, but also kind of like a natural escalation to it with the child giving him that bag. It's like, what's in this bag and what it means, and a certain bit of wish fulfillment on behalf of the child.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it's interesting bringing up Roald Dahl and Willy Wonka and the fact that it's in here. I didn't think about it to just now, and I was wondering if that bringing him up was on purpose, and if that was this, like, kind of the crux or like the germination of this story is this kind of Willy Wonka, Roald Dahl kind of concept. Because I've read some of his Roald Dahl's, I've read a lot of his kid books, and then he's got also his adult stories and stuff like that too. And he always kind of plays with this kind of whimsy and macabre kind of stuff. And I'm just wondering if that was like maybe some inspiration here.
I mean, I feel this is just me spitballing, because he mentions Poe in the story too.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And I think like Poe and Dahl were probably big influences on Joe. Yeah. Especially since Joe has this kind of like dark, macabre, fantastical style that he likes to go for. I can see echoes of Dahl and echoes of Poe, like in a lot of the stories Joe likes to write, especially when he uses his imagination. Like Pop Art, for instance, is a story that had to take a wonderful imagination to come up with that concept. And even Last Breath also takes someone like, it's a fantastic concept that you need a good imagination to come up with.
I also like that it this didn't strike me until maybe the third reading of the story, that it takes place in an uncertain time period.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're not sure if it's modern, and there's one clue that maybe it's not in present day is when are we going into spoiler territory? Is that okay?
Yes, we do spoilers.
Okay, so after the mother gets hit by the car, I believe it's a Cadillac, the driver who gets out is wearing a pork pie hat.
Yes.
which is really your only clue that, okay, maybe this isn't in the 2000s.
Yes.
Yeah. To me, it kind of had a feeling of being like 1950s or 60s, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he does. I'm looking it up now because the other reference is when Roald Dahl, because he has Roald Dahl's voice So when did Roald Dahl die? He died in the 90s.
Oh, okay. Well,
He died in 1990, so it'd have to be sometime after that. But,
Okay.
Oh, okay.
fair enough.
Nice detective work.
yeah. Well, and I just thought about that now. I was like, wait, we do have one other reference is when he passed, because
That's a good point.
because all the other references, Poe, I mean, we know, so yeah, the 50s could have worked for Poe, and then the two others, the one who died in the plane, and then wasn't there one other person who passed? Yeah, you have no clue on when they died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the model.
Yes, the model. Yep.
Yeah. And something that I think is just absolutely brilliant, and I try to keep an eye out for this kind of thing, is this escalation of introduction. So when we first see these containers, these beakers that hold the last breath, the first one that they listen to sounds like he describes it, I think, as a backwards hiccup.
Yes.
And then,
Yes.
and then the second one, so we hear the breath, and then the second one is Poe,
Yeah.
where there's actually a word in there, whiskey.
Yeah. Whiskey.
So wow, it escalates up, and then there's the model. And when the mother puts on the headphones, we don't get any inclination as to what she heard, other than it freaked her out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that because following that pattern, you'd think it would be worse, and it is, but he doesn't show it to us.
Yes. Well, and two, with that, like, you get the father after listening to the Poe one, his face, like, you can see it on his face. He's got like his cheeks are red and he looks a little bit more pallid. So you kind of like, exactly what you're saying. Like, the boy is like, oh, cool, I listened to this serial killer's last breath and his whatever. And then you see like the dad and then the mom. And that's when the mom's like, no, we're out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that, because that's what I was wondering at first. You know, I mean, like when you're first reading this and you're kind of going through and you're like, okay, something is happening, and especially when you see the dad and his face complexion kind of changes, and he talks about, well, I felt the feeling for wanting whiskey, and so in my brain I was like, oh, this is like, you know, he's whatever they listen to, that's the way they're going to die. But which is not true, because when we get to see what happens to the mom. So I love that, like, you can kind of play, and it's exactly what you're saying with like the ending, like for everything you don't know, your imagination just goes off and it's like, it could be this, it could be that.
Although
I thought it was
there is an interesting thread that you just hit on there, Matt, with what they hear being related to their cause of death, because what she heard was the model who died in a plane crash. And the mother dies by being hit by a car.
Good
Which
point.
is an interesting thread of some sort of vehicular mishap.
Yeah. Which then could lead, if we're thinking of that, is the father getting a depression and drinking himself to death. Huh.
Very possible.
Ah, interesting. So
I thought it was a
voice-
stroke of genius too, that when the father hears the word whiskey, and then the caretaker has him turn the car around.
Yeah.
Yes.
It didn't have to be there, but man, I'm so glad it is.
Yes, I thought that was awesome, because like you got set up.
It puts it in reality.
Yes.
It makes it so that it's not just in the father's head that he's hearing something or some subliminal messaging that, yeah, no, that's what you heard.
Exactly. Yeah, I was just thinking that. It sets it to that. This is real. It's not just some like fake thing that they're listening to. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. It's something tangible.
Yes. And I love that in stories. I love when a story plays with the supernatural or the fantastic, but then lets you know 100% this is real. It's not a hallucination. It's not a fantasy. It is actually happening.
Yeah.
So to kind of backtrack a little bit for readers who may not have read Last Breath.
Which they should read it. It's only $1.
Definitely. If you're already this deep into the show, you may as well just stop and read Last Breath and come on back. But it involves this family stopping at kind of like a roadside attraction, kind of like a tourist trap kind of thing that you would imagine. If you've ever experienced like the world's biggest ball of yarn, they think that this is supposed to be a science exhibit. And when they explained this to Dr. Allinger, the man who runs this exhibition, he explains that they had misheard, and this is actually a museum of silence. And what he has arranged on the tabletops in the room are these series of sealed off beakers that have stethoscopes glued onto them. And you can stethoscopes. What did I say?
Oh, you did. He calls them deathoscopes.
Stethoscopes.
Yeah, he says stethoscopes.
So you put on these stethoscopes and you can hear the last breath of a dying person that has been captured in this jar and hermetically sealed to preserve it. And as we explained already, the father listens to one and hears Edgar Allan Poe's dying breath asking for whiskey. The son hears the last breath of a serial killer that Dr. Allinger oversaw the execution of and captured the breath. And it sounds like a hiccup in reverse, just kind of like a kind of gasp for air. Would that be a fair kind of sound for it? Like,
I think
That was precise.
thank you. My years as a thespian are finally paying off on this show. And the mother listens to the last breath of a supermodel who died in a plane crash. Although she didn't actually die in the plane crash, she was burned. Like 80% of her body was burned and pieces fused together, and she survived long enough to make it into the hospital for a little while before finally expiring. And once again, Dr. Allinger was present and captured her dying breath and has added to this exhibit. And the mother is very much a skeptic. She thinks this is all a hoax. It's all nonsense. Her son and husband are jackasses for buying into this shit. And then she finally picks up the stethoscope to kind of like, that's her last piece to figure out. She's got all these theories of how Dr. Allinger is confusing and pulling the wool over her family's eyes. And what she hears rattles her so badly. She runs out of the building and straight to their car that's parked across the street, not looking in either direction. And bam, she runs right into traffic. Her mind is so scattered and her anxiety so high that
she's pancaked by a Cadillac.
Yeah, she runs right into traffic and gets hit by a Cadillac.
Pancaked by a fedora-wearing Cadillac driver.
So there's interesting things that kind of, bringing that up is at the beginning is, first of all, the only character that has a name is Dr. Allinger. I thought that was interesting. It's the boy, it's the father, it's the mother or wife and husband. So
and the victims are named.
The victims are named, but otherwise that's it. So I thought that was an interesting choice, which then ties to what you were talking about with this being like a tourist trap, because at the beginning you kind of get Dr. Allinger, he's a super tall dude. He's really looks emaciated and skeletal, and he is waiting in front of the foyer, and he knows that they're coming, and he's like has this whole system because he knows when people come in, they all get confused. He's like, but if I take their coats or if I'm here greeting them, they're less likely to turn around and leave. And he has like the first beakers kind of front and present so that they are instantly kind of called in and come in and start exploring. So I thought that was, again, kind of like, I keep going back, you bringing up Willy Wonka, and this feels, more and more we talk about it, it feels just like that, where he has this plan and he's gonna bring them in and he's gonna show them all these things, and he even does the Willy Wonka thing of telling the wife, the mother, right before she picks up one of the stethoscopes, like, oh, I usually warm people up before they go to that one. That one's too intense, which is 100% basically Willy Wonka saying, well, that's the golden goose, but don't go in there and look at it.
She won the golden ticket.
Yes, or like, that's my fizzy lifting drink, but it's not ready yet, and then leaves. That's exactly what that is like. And like you don't get any malice out of him. Like, you're never in the story thinking he's trying to, like, he's setting out to capture these people, but you kind of get these little hints of like, well, he's there when that one guy is executed, and he's there when the supermodel's burnt down. So you just, these tiny little things of like, this is what he does. but not enough to think that's what his goal is.
Yeah, I mean, he is not described in the flattering details, though, Dr.
Right.
Allinger.
No.
Which is what made me think, like, the way he's described here by Joe Hill immediately put, like, an Angus Scrimm kind of image in my mind. Like, this is the funeral director of the Phantasm movies. Like,
yes.
He's described as cadaverous.
Yes.
He's 10 inches over 6 feet. His temples sunk into shadowed hollows, small teeth that are gray. So,
maybe he's Angus Scrimm.
Yeah, this guy is kind of like death personified. And it's interesting, and it recalls for me kind of a Fight Club sort of thing, where if Dr. Allinger is given this personification of death, that the family are unnamed because they don't get a name until they die.
Yeah.
It's not until the mother is hit by the Cadillac that we would be told, if it continued, that her name was Robert Paulson.
Nice.
His name was Robert Paulson.
His name was Robert Paulson.
Yeah, the character of Allinger is fascinating because you can, in line with the story, you can fill in all these details of not only what he does, but why he does it. For example, you get the sense that he's seen the skeptics hundreds of times, and he's probably not winning over too many people. He doesn't charge an entry, and yet he has $12,000 to spend on Poe's last breath.
Yeah.
And like you pointed out, that Michael, there's no you don't get any malice from him, but you get that he's not particularly what's the term? Like he's not
flattering.
He doesn't. And he doesn't change his approach when speaking around children.
Right.
Which I thought was interesting. Like he gives the graphic details, but he does so in a very easy
kind
sort of way.
logical.
This is what happened. This is who he was. This is what he did, and he clinical. That's the word. Yeah. You get so much from about his character just from those interactions.
Like, especially I was thinking at the end. So like you hear the accident and then you start kind of seeing out the door, and he takes his time to get his coat because it's going to be chilly out. So he's not rushing out to help her, even when the father's like, "Doctor, you got to come out here. You know, you're a doctor." He's taking his time, and he get his coat because it's cold, and he's like 80. And so, yeah, you totally get exactly all of that. But which is interesting too, though, is he forgets either he forgot the case on purpose, or he just forgot the case because the kid is like, "Here's your case with the thing in it," which I thought was interesting to have the kid do it. And through it all of it, he's always like rustling the boy's hair, and he's kind of being nice to the kid. He's like primed for this, to do something with this kid.
You just know the mother's going to be the next exhibit.
Oh yeah, totally, 100%.
And the kid might be eventually his protege.
Yeah. So
well, that would be an interesting take.
Yeah.
Well, it's like
Oh, and you know what? I mean, if that ties into how they die, like that noise that he hears from the serial killer, if that's representative of his eventual fate, I mean, that could be the noise of the doctor drawing, or his eventual protege, or himself drawing his final breath.
Well, It's also like when he hands the bag back to Dr. Allinger, it says like, Allinger smiled fondly, went back up the steps, took it from the boy's cold fingers.
Yes.
And like it's the cold fingers part that always gets me when it comes to that description.
Yes. That's interesting. Or just the fact that he has, while they're going around and they're exploring, and the mother is getting ready to listen to the supermodels, the boy just finds the case, and Joe describes it as just like, well, as a kid, he just opens it. He doesn't like ask for permission or anything, and he just starts pulling things out, which just kind of leads to this interesting concept with the cold fingers, and the fact that he's handing it, knowing what the doctor needs to do and what's going to happen. That's a good point.
And that's such a perfect way of writing a child. This is a very accurate depiction of children. Like looking at my kids, it's like mom's trying to rush them out the door and the kids just fucking around in the background, like opening up people's bags and rooting around and shit. Like he's not budging. Like he doesn't listen. He's not following directions. Like, yeah, this is accurate. This is exactly.
His body slamming his brother.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if you heard one just bust into the office a minute ago. Daddy! Like, all right, mute. I got to mute.
That's so funny.
Speaking of Angus Scrimm, did you guys notice that he actually uses the last name Scrimm in this story?
I did notice that.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah, Scrimm is the name of the guy in Paris who bought the last breath of Enrico Caruso.
Interesting. Huh.
So definitely paying homage to Phantasm there.
Yeah. You can really feel.
And you kind of wonder.
Go on, Tyler.
Oh, go. You get the sense that Allinger is doing this sort of to go back to the Willy Wonka thing, that the whole point of the contest in Willy Wonka was to find a protege. And you can get the sense that that's that Allinger is doing as well. Is that maybe all the adults who pass through, who don't care, who don't believe in it, who are skeptical or freaked out, it's the children that he's watching for. And maybe he was waiting for the one to hand him his bag, just like Willy Wonka was waiting for the one to give him back the gobstopper.
Yes.
I love it.
Yes.
Well, and even to go with that too, you think about what the kid has listened to. He listened to somebody that killed children. So listen to that kind of last breath, and then he listened to the Roald Dahl one, which, they're fun ones. He didn't listen to the Poe one, which, really wouldn't affect him. He wouldn't get that understanding of the whiskey and what Poe was doing, or he wouldn't. Or the model one, which was really intense, which I think is just, like he's totally setting this up. And who knows if that's the case, but I think that's what it seems like.
It seems to me like this is kind of a common theme that's been in a few Joe Hill stories too, is this like idea of death and how one approaches death. Like, have you read his new collection, Full Throttle?
Yes.
No.
Oh, yeah.
The library one about the mobile library.
Oh, I loved that one. That was that's one of my favorites. I thought that was absolutely fantastic.
I feel like that also ties into this one with just like a commentary about how different people view death.
Yeah.
Only like that one's more about, I think, more personal. I mean, I think they're all personal at Joe Hill, but I think that one's like dying in the middle of a good story type of idea.
Yeah.
Where this one is just a reaction to death.
A certain measure of maintaining some kind of immortality too.
Yeah.
Either through story or here through their dying breath being preserved and shared with everyone. It's a way for them to be remembered.
Well, that theme, to go back to your question, Richard, about why this story, that theme is something that resonates deeply with me, is death and how we approach it, and how there are positive and negative ways to view it. And it always fascinates me. I work in healthcare, so I am around death frequently, and it never fails to amaze me how people want to avoid this very simple fact. Like the only certainty in life is that we will die. And some people just cannot come to terms with that. They don't want to think about it. It's morbid. They want to avoid it at all costs. And I think we see that personified in the character of the mother. Yeah. What she's witnessing is simply natural. People die. But she doesn't want to think about it, doesn't want her children or child or husband to be around it. And sure enough, a few pages later, she's dead herself. And it seems to be like a very forceful way of saying, no one knows when this is coming. It's natural. Like, you have to accept it. You have to think about it. You have to come to terms with this. Otherwise, your life is one where you are constantly running away from those things and possibly running straight into your own end. And that is so worth thinking about. And it's the child who has that fascination and curiosity, which seems macabre, but maybe it's actually healthy.
And it seems to me like something Mike said kind of struck with me as well. And this idea of being remembered. And it's like maybe your physical body dies, but if people still remember you or there's a piece of you left behind, like, you still exist in some form. So are you even truly fully dead? Because the whole idea of this museum is it's all these last breaths, right? Well, all these people still have evidence of their existence and are still remembered. So even though there's a permanence in there, there's still some aspects of us that live on after we die.
Which actually is interesting. I don't know, and I have no idea if the story at the end of this little collection, so when you buy the Kindle single of this story, he has his acknowledgments, and Joe put another story in there. So I have no idea if that story is in any other collection, but it's all about his typewriter, a father writing stories, and then the father dies, but the typewriter continues to tell stories. And, Joe ends it really funny where he's like, I've only heard tale of this collection, but I haven't found it, and I'm trying to find it, or something like that. And, it's fun like that. But that goes to exactly what you're kind of saying. And with this story, and then with the typewriter thing of this, like, life kind of living on through something. So in the typewriter story, the dad is living on through these creepy ghost stories. They're being told through a typewriter, and then in Last Breath, it's through their last breath. So yeah, I think that's an interesting I like that idea. I think that's cool. The other thing I think is interesting in Last Breath that is kind of behind the scenes, it's not the main focus, but it's something that you pick up, is the fact that other people are collecting breaths, and it's been going on for a while, because they even like reference that with Poe. They're like, the dad's like, oh, well, wait a minute, Poe died a long time ago, and they're like, oh yeah, I found somebody like I can't remember, it's like Poe's great aunt or great grandniece or somebody related was able to capture that breath and came up with the specs for this machine. But I think that's such like a funny, like a cool world building, is you don't get anything else about how he hunts these down, except that there's people that know about it, and there's people who sell them. And I thought that was like a really cool kind of idea, that this thing is going around in the world, that people are collecting last breaths and letting others listen to them.
It almost goes back to what Mike was saying about Fight Club.
Yeah,
that similar kind of thing where there's chapters popping up, and they're all over the place.
It's a premise that is rooted in some degree of reality. I don't know how widespread it is, but there's a rumor, I think it's true, at the Henry Ford Museum here in Michigan, Thomas Edison's last breath is preserved in a test tube.
Ah, I did not know that.
It was apparently discovered in the Ford family house after Henry and his wife had died. And apparently it is on display at the Ford Museum.
Well, okay.
I don't know if you can hear anything, but
I have questions. So the family found it somewhere?
Yeah, apparently.
So
I guess like Henry Ford, he was fairly eccentric, so
like who captured it? And who
I'm trying to read it right now. Hold on a minute.
Come on, give me that information.
Okay, so according to a website called The Straight Dope. So right away, this is a legitimate website.
Is it .net?
.com. It's a .com site, so it's trustworthy. Edison's last breath is preserved at the Henry Ford Museum. Ford was a great admirer of Edison's, having once served as chief engineer at the Detroit Edison Company. Later, the two became fast friends. Ford recreated Edison's Menlo Park workshop in Greenfield Village, the collection of historic buildings next to the Ford Museum, and it's possible he wanted to recreate Edison himself, after a manner of speaking. Supposedly, Ford asked Edison's son Charles to hold a test tube next to his father's mouth when he breathed his last breath in 1931. Ford's motive for this odd request is obscure. He is known to have been interested in reincarnation, and some say he thought the spirit exited the body with one's last breath. Ergo, what he was collecting was essence of Edison, no doubt for reconstitution at some later date. Others say he just wanted a souvenir of Edison's departed body. But Whatever the case, it's likely that any Edisonian vestiges, if in fact there ever were any, have long since leaked out. Well, the tube was discovered in the Ford family home in 1950 after both Henry and his wife had died. It is now on display at the Ford Museum in case you wanted to make any last-minute amendments to your vacation plans.
I just imagine finding that. Some guy just like, oh, look at this, and opens it up.
Whoops.
Yeah.
Then Edison haunts him or possesses him.
You just find this test tube labeled Tommy. Like, what the fuck?
It's just got some duct tape on the top.
But I would swear there is some historical analog to this story, that there is some basis in reality for this, even beyond Thomas Edison. Yeah, I think at one point the doctor even goes, people will collect anything. Like, it's like, okay, that's fair. I can see that.
Yeah. You got Walt Disney's head. There's stuff like that. So.
Yeah. Einstein's brain.
So that makes sense. But I just really like that he kind of puts it in there, but it's such a glancing thing that you don't like. You're kind of focused on what's happening in the story, but you can kind of look and be like, man, there's this whole world of people owning breaths and selling them or collecting them. Which I thought was a neat thing to throw in. But yes, this is an awesome story.
Maybe we can start like an Abyss OnlyFans page where we just sell our breath to people.
Oh my God, that sounds so weird. It's so creepy. Just here, have my breath.
Yeah, $10. I'll breathe in a jar and mail it to you.
And hopefully I can capture it in time. I mean, that's
it'll be fine. Just take a deep breath. Fill up the jar. It'll be good.
He describes it in the story. It's like a metal thermos with tubes. So
yeah. I mean, how lucrative do you think these OnlyFans could be, Mike?
I don't know. I mean, I guess we can film it, right, and do like sexy breathing into a jar.
Done. Out. Good day.
I feel bad for Tyler just being in this conversation right now.
Well, Tyler hasn't chimed in for a while. I think he feels pretty bad about it, too.
But I really like the idea, this concept of Willy Wonka. I think this had some inspiration for it. Had to have.
Yeah, I agree.
Definitely.
I think that's a valid comparison. One thing that I like with Joe Hill is, like, I know there is a little bit of a generational gap between us, but there's kind of like similar touchstones for us being of that kind of generation, like knowing his influences from Jaws and Twilight Zone. And this kind of had like an Amazing Stories kind of feel to it for me. And I was wondering like how much that seemed to have been an influential touchstone for him in crafting this, along with stuff like Phantasm and Roald Dahl and Willy Wonka and Poe, obviously.
No, I was thinking that too. It felt like on the surface, and I know we've talked about it for a while, but on the surface, it's kind of a straightforward, simple, macabre words story. It's just when you start kind of peeling it back that you see a lot more. But I could see that totally as a amazing story kind of thing. I was trying to think. I feel like this might be my second or third Joe Hill story. I don't think I've read very much from him.
You gotta fix that.
Have got to read Nosferatu.
Yeah.
Honestly, he should read Horns before he reads Nosferatu.
I haven't read Horns, honestly. Nosferatu was my introduction to Joe Hill, and I think as long as you've read Stephen King, that's a really great entry point for Joe Hill's work. There are little Easter eggs to some of King's more popular stories here and there, but it doesn't feel like a pastiche. It's very much, Hill and King, obviously, they share a lot of genetic DNA, which plays into their works. There's a lot of writerly DNA between the two, which comes very naturally to Hill. I mean, reading that, you're like, okay, if you didn't know that he was King's son and you found out while you're reading Nosferatu, it's like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. I can see that. Like, this is very much He's not just influenced by King's writing. He's very much got that genetic talent that King has.
Yeah.
So,
and that's the
Tyler,
Christmas Vacation.
I will say Tyler's trying to figure out his microphone again.
Okay.
I'm trying to troubleshoot with him.
Okay. That's fine.
Okay, so we didn't offend him with the OnlyFans.
Oh my god.
It's like, oh boy, they're going that direction. I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm with Matt. We're taking off.
How dare they do this?
Oh, that's hilarious.
Thank God we didn't get into Matt's other kinks.
That's on the older episodes. If they want to go back and find them, I'm sure they'll be able to.
Right.
Yeah, that will be on Matt's OnlyFans. That's a
There you
solo
go.
endeavor.
You can just collect all those together and have a wild adventure. Yeah, it's funny Nosferatu because that sounded. I don't know why I haven't read any Joe Hill.
I don't know.
I think I just didn't.
Yeah, I mean, his short stories are a great starting point. Also, I mean, like Last Breath, it's a story you really can't go wrong with.
Yeah.
The typewriter story, I really liked the kind of meta commentary in that, where it's sort of a look at if Joe Hill had not been published, as he talks in his afterword about how his first release was 20th Century Ghosts, which is kind of a lark in publishing. Like, who the hell takes a story collection from a complete unknown and just releases it? Right. That was at a time when Joe Hill was keeping his connection to Stephen King's secret. Like, no one at that time knew he was related. He was trying to get into writing under his own talents, under his own pseudonym. Yeah. That no one knew he was Joe King. So,
can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're back.
Yes. Hey.
So to get this story collection as your first release as a complete unknown, I mean, that's an incredible lark to begin with. And then that typewriter story plays with that element. I think at one point he had given up on trying to sell his works. And then it's not until posthumously that the daughter compiles it and is able to sell it, which again is kind of a lark on its own. And he notes that there was no market in collections by writers of no reputation.
Right. Well, and then he even references, I think, because I can't remember if it was the writer that had gone out, or no, I think it was the daughter who like finally hit indie horror, and that's who published it for him.
Yeah.
I thought that was an interesting touch.
So I know you've been listening to all of this, Tyler. Do you want to chime in about any of it?
Man, I could talk about Joe Hill all day. Yeah, I agree. Nosferatu is phenomenal.
It is. It is a really great book.
It's a special one. And anytime I hear Joe talk about the way that he got published and the fact that he went with his middle name, my respect for him just grows enormously. I love that he was determined to make it on his own as a writer. And in one interview, he talked about the fact that he would never know if he was any good if he used his actual last name and got published. And I really respect that from an artistic perspective.
Yeah. I mean, he could have just drafted a cover letter that says, hey, I'm Stephen King's son, and gotten a 6-figure deal right off the bat.
Right. Yeah. And then knowing that, I don't think it's affected any. I'm sure that there are some who read him simply because he is Stephen King's son, but I think most people just judge him based on his own work.
Mm-hmm. I think he's proven himself very immensely with how good of a writer he is.
Oh, absolutely. I would say for sure he has. And he's got a pretty expansive career between novels and a slew of comic books. I mean, he has definitely made his mark with things like Nosferatu, Lock and Key, I think is probably, you can't deny that was a huge success for him and very much a trademark Joe Hill kind of story, which would be another excellent starting point for people wanting to know about Joe Hill, whether you pick up Lock and Key as the comic book trades or the Audible original drama that they did. That was fucking fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then they got the Netflix show.
Which I still haven't seen.
Yeah, I haven't watched that either.
Yeah, don't watch it.
And then he did that imprint with DC. Was that last year?
Yes, the Hill House comics.
Hill House, yes. So there's
some great graphic novels in that series as well.
Yes,
very much so.
He has definitely made his mark on his own. He's building his own rich legacy without Stephen King's influence,
which is cool.
Not to get too far off from Last Breath, but have any of you read his short novel Loaded that's in the Strange Weather collection?
Loaded was fucking great. That ending alone, holy shit.
It was the most complex point of view on the whole gun control argument that I've ever seen in fiction.
Yeah.
Like, you think you know where it's going, and then the final page and the final line, you're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, that final line gets you good.
Yeah, I don't remember a whole lot of that story, except while I was reading it, my main thought was the right wing is going to hate this story.
Interesting. All right.
Yeah, it is a fantastic story.
Yeah, it was like the NRA is going to be coming after Joe Hill for this story. Like they're sending him death threats right now. I am sure of it.
Yeah.
Hopefully they didn't. I don't know. I hope they didn't.
But then that final line sort of complicates it a bit too, I think.
Yeah.
Do you remember that final line, Michael?
I don't. No, it's been an age since I read it. When
is
did
it
that come out?
Line?
5 or 6 years?
6 years ago, I think.
Yeah, you think you know where it's going, and then the very final line of that story is with the main antagonist is pointing a gun at somebody who doesn't have one. And he says something to the effect of, this story would have a completely different ending if you also had a gun, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
You're like, whoa.
Oh man, I love that novella.
That sounds awesome.
That whole collection is really great. Very, very diverse.
It kind of, it shows Joe Hill's, like, I think each of Joe Hill's collections kind of shows his influences and styles really well.
Yeah, for sure. Well, when you asked me about what story I was going to pick, it was a toss-up between Last Breath and Fawn from Full Throttle.
Ooh, Fawn was a good one too. I feel like with Joe Hill, like pretty much everything I've read by Joe Hill is usually a winner. I've enjoyed all his collections. I wasn't the biggest fan of The Fireman, but I liked his other novels a lot.
Yeah, The Fireman, there's the fact that it's as big as it is, and yet it's immensely readable. I think even if you love it or hate it, the fact that most people who didn't like it still read the whole thing is a testament to how good he is.
I met him years ago, back when I was in college. And like when I met him, I already knew he was Stephen King's son. But when I was like talking to him, I was just like, how did people not catch this earlier? Like, he looks like his dad, he talks like his dad, he has that Maine accent.
Yeah. I remember.
Well, wasn't it the fact that he looks like his dad is what actually outed him?
Yeah,
I think so. I remember Brian Keene talking about it on the horror show when they were all on message boards, and they grew to be online friends and were able to converse with each other, and Joe Hill had told them he's Stephen King's son. And their reaction was like, bullshit, you're not Stephen King's son. And then they all met in person and saw Joe Hill, and he's like, holy shit, you're Stephen King's son. Like, he looks just like his dad did at that age. I got to meet him very briefly at a signing we had in my region of Michigan. There's this annual science fiction convention called Confusion, and he was one of the guests. And I got to stand in line and have him sign the first 3 hardcover volumes of my Lock and Key collections. So that was my little acclaim to fame.
He's a super nice guy.
He is. He was very, very nice. He also had a very, very long line, so you couldn't tie up too much of his time. I got to sit in on a panel with him and John Scalzi. They were doing a reading from their new works, and they got into a pillow fight. So, I got to have this little 30-second video clip of them getting into a pillow fight, and John Scalzi just whipped the shit out of him with this pillow. Like,
oh no!
Like Hill wasn't fighting back, and Scalzi's just wailing on him. Like,
oh wow! Leave it to Scalzi.
It was hilarious. It was a good time. A great panel too.
I've been to 2 readings and met him twice. The first one was for The Fireman. I was just so thrilled that he came to Portland to Powell's Books, and I've been a fan from the beginning. So I came with this like 2 bags just full of books, and he graciously signed them all. He just had me wait at the very end of the line, and so that sweet. I didn't hold anybody up, and we got to chat for a while. So he and I both share a deep love of the band Oasis. So we bonded over that, which was great.
Nice.
And I got to tell him that pop art meant a lot to me. And so there's 2 stories that have moved me to tears, and one of them is pop art, and another one, oddly enough, is this one-shot lock and key that he did. I believe it's called Open the Moon.
Oh, that's a good one.
Do you remember that one?
I remember that one.
Yeah. So I have 2 boys, but my 12-year-old is medically fragile and has epilepsy, and the character in Open the Moon also has epilepsy, and they take him up in that hot air balloon and open up the moon, and he gets to see his grandpa who had died, and they leave him there with his.
Oh, wow.
And it got me. And same thing with pop art, because it's essentially a story about loving somebody who is fragile. Yeah. And it's a gorgeous story. And so I mean, I brought my own stuff to these stories, but I was able to tell him, and I felt weird about it. I didn't want to be that weird guy, but I also wanted him to know, like, these stories matter, man. You're talking about writing stories about an inflatable boy and a key that can open the moon, but they mean more than just that. So I have been a longtime fan, and what he's able to do and what he's able to, the stories he's able to shape, and he's able to leave this space for us as readers to bring our own experiences and emotions to bear on the story is a real gift.
I mean, definitely. Even with just this story is proof of that. I mean, we've been talking about it for like an hour, and it's only 8 pages, 9 pages.
Right. Well, and I also have to mention that for the reading of The Fireman, he brought some special kazoos that he had made, and then he brought 8 people up and handed them each a kazoo, and they formed what he called a kazookestra. And he led them in a version of, I can't remember what Beatles song it was, but he had written lyrics specific to The Fireman, because it takes place at Camp Wyndham, and so he wrote like a Camp Wyndham song, and so everybody was, I think it was Hey Jude, they were doing the kazoo to the melody of Hey Jude, and then he would sing these Camp Wyndham lyrics. It was awesome. I tried to get my hand on one of those kazoos, but I failed.
I saw him do a reading for Nosferatu, and he didn't do any of that for that book.
No, not for mine either. It was a pretty straightforward reading, but it was excellent to hear, even without the kazoo backing him up.
That should be a thing. More writers should do that.
I really feel like I missed out now. I feel cheated.
I'm sure Joe will come back around again on his next.
But will he bring kazoos? I doubt it.
Probably harmonicas.
Maybe. Maybe he'll upgrade.
Maybe.
Recorders.
Those little like rubbing sticks that you can rub together.
Well, I would like to say this has been a really great conversation, and thank you for joining us on the podcast, Tyler.
Oh, my pleasure, you guys. This has been a blast.
Before we finish up anything, are there any books coming up that you'd like to promote?
Yeah. So last year I released 2 novellas. The first one is Criterium. It's about a young boy whose father died, and this boy is struggling with addiction, and he stumbles across a really unusual bike that takes him on a pretty terrifying ride. And then I also released The Dark Side of the Room, which is about this mysterious stranger who moves into an apartment complex, and something bad comes with him. I'm re-releasing both of those books this year. and part of the reason is for Criterium, I wrote a companion novella that I wanted to pair with it. So I've got it's a novella called Enter Softly, and it's a companion to Criterium. So I'm going to re-release that book with the new novella included, and incredibly, it will include an introduction by Jeremy Robert Johnson.
Nice.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah, I was really, really grateful. He wrote this beautiful introduction. And then I wrote also a companion short story to The Dark Side of the Room. And the reissue will also come with an introduction by Philip Fracassi.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah,
oh, man.
So I didn't want to just reissue it. So it has some bonus content. And also, those are going to be released on the same day that I'm releasing a new book called Almost Ruth. And it's kind of set in a version of the Old West about a grave digger who finds that there are more than bodies buried beneath the cemetery.
Ooh.
And
I love the cover for that one.
Yeah, isn't that cool? Gemma Moore painted that.
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
Very cool artwork. And it was originally intended to be a novella, but it's actually slipped into novel territory. So it'll be a short novel. But that one will also come with a bonus in-world short story. So I'm going to be releasing all three of those on the same day. Release date to be determined, but we're aiming for August. And then I have a short story collection, speaking of short stories, coming out through Cemetery Gates Media in January, and the collection is called Burn the Plans.
Ooh. Oh, nice. Love that title.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I'm thrilled that the artist David Mack is doing a cover for that. He did the artwork for Criterium, and he's pretty well known within the comics world.
Yeah. Holy crap.
Yeah, he actually is really cool. So he and Brian Michael Bendis wrote a graphic novel called Cover, and that just got picked up by HBO Max to be an animated series, and Bendis is writing it, and David Mack is directing it.
Wow. Crap.
And I reached out to him thinking he would not have the time to do artwork for me, but he was willing and thrilled to do it. So that'll be really cool. We'll do a cover reveal here in the next probably month or two for the collection.
Looking forward to it. And where can the listeners get in touch with you?
My website is tylerjones.net, and I'm on Twitter and Instagram at TikiJonesWriter.
Perfect. And Matt, what about you?
I am on Twitter at BrandenburgDM.
And do you have any stories you want to tell us about besides hiding them on us, Matt?
Well, I guess if you didn't listen last week, I think 3 things coming out so far. I think the one, I'm trying to think when this episode comes out. I believe 99. I have a story in 99 Tiny Terrors from Pulse Publishing, and I believe that is coming out, they said 3rd quarter. So it could be out anytime around then. And the other one, which I'm assuming will be out around this time as well, is in Dark Corner Zine. And yeah, I'm not sure on the other one. That one's been kind of a slow process, but yes. So I have those 2 coming up.
All right. And Mike, what about you?
You can find me on Twitter at MikeH5856. Head over to my website, michaelpatrickhicks.com, or pick up a copy of Far From Home, the latest anthology from Off Limits Press, which includes my story, A Song of the Earth.
And you can follow me on Twitter at Rudy53088, and also be sure to pick up a copy of Dark Words Tales. I gotta get my copy here. Stories of Urban Legends and Folklore, which is the debut anthology from Dandelion Publishing, and includes my debut story, Beyond the Triangle.
I just hope we didn't send Matt into another death spiral asking him to list his publications. That was a whole thing last week.
Yeah. What?
I listened to the raw audio. That's why I had to say something.
I don't know. I mean, we talked about it last week. I'm not very good at promoting myself. I think other people are better, and you should read them instead.
All this stuff has been hiding from us for years now.
Read Matt Brandenburg.
Yeah, thank you.
Brandenburg.
Oh, by the way, it was Mark David Chapman, not Michael David Chapman.
Oh, important. We
Sorry,
do not
Michael.
have his last breath on record at the Abyss.
That we know of.
Yeah, so might find it like in the bathroom somewhere.
Maybe Ford has it.
And be sure to give our podcast some ratings on Apple Podcasts and wherever else you listen to us, because we want to make sure we spread that Abyss around. And this is Richard Gerlach saying, keep staring.
Armcast, Dead Sexy Podcasts. I'm your host, Armand Rosamilia. Fridays exclusively on Project Entertainment Network, where I interview authors, publishers, editors, artists, filmmakers, narrators, the lady from Walmart, whoever I feel like talking to. That's every Friday, Armcast, right here on Project Entertainment Network.
This has been a presentation of the Project Entertainment Network.